So the question, and I'll put it to all three of you. Let's see if we'll play a little game here. Sorry if there's a pop quiz, Manuel, but everybody in the newsroom's been asking all day, what exactly is a cryptocurrency?
I would agree definitely with Mr. Trichet. We can really talk about crypto assets and not really about cryptocurrencies. So what is Bitcoin? I would say that Bitcoin is a global network for storing value and exchanging value, right? So a global network which is comprised of thousands of computers linked together into a digital network, and which allow people, everyone who wants to access this network is able every day to actually deliver transactions between anyone. So, and this network has a series of technical innovations that make it very interesting and very valuable. First of all, it's fast. A Bitcoin transaction is going to require about 10 minutes to be settled on the network. So that's much faster than existing banking networks. A Bitcoin transaction is extremely secure. It's much more secure than using, for instance, your credit card on any e-commerce website. And a Bitcoin is also valuable because it's scarce. There is a finite number of Bitcoins. We will never reach a limit of 21 million units. So that also gives it a lot of value. But finally...
Who defined this 21 million units?
This is defined by the actual source code of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is really a program.
Some say made by a Japanese man, and
we don't know actually who he was. We only know his pseudonym, who was Satoshi Nakamoto. His real name is actually unknown, but it actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the real interesting and most innovative characteristic of Bitcoin is that it's totally decentralized. That means that behind Bitcoin, there is not a bank or even a central bank. There is not a company or there's not even a single individual. It's just a network which just lives by itself. It's autonomous, and we call it decentralized. And that's basically what the real value of Bitcoin is.
Susannah Streeter, what's your definition of Bitcoin?
Well, I think that's been explained extremely well by our previous guest. And I think what is very interesting with the development of Bitcoin and other currencies with their own blockchain networks is the potential for blockchain technology, which is already being used across a huge range of industries. What has already been highlighted by Jean-Claude Trichet is the very fact of the volatility of Bitcoin, which means that it is not a reliable store of value because it's simply so volatile. And that really is at the heart of the danger surrounding cryptocurrencies. There have been an awful lot of retail investors who ploughed into crypto over the past year, from mums in the playground with their crypto wallets to first-time investors. Some of them, around 14% in the UK, who hold crypto assets are actually borrowing to invest in this very volatile asset. And that is extremely concerning because ultimately we don't know what the final use case of Bitcoin will be. There are thousands of coins and tokens out there. Who knows which one will really become the most popular? And yes, I understand that there's a finite supply of Bitcoin, but also we have rivals such as Ether on the Ethereum network, for example. And there's been so much speculation about that. There are currencies, so-called coins, which have started as a joke, like Dogecoin, and been fueled by speculation on social media. It is this which is the problem. You're getting influencers with a huge amount of power who are whipping up frenzy around certain coins. And people are ploughing in with their life savings without really knowing what they're investing in. So that is the real danger surrounding this.
The real danger surrounding this, the Basel-based Bank for International Settlements, which is owned by the world banks of the central banks of the world, it's taking a dim view to these cryptocurrencies. I'll read to you a statement they put out earlier this week saying it's clear that cryptocurrencies are speculative assets rather than money, and in many cases are used to facilitate money laundering, ransomware attacks, and other financial crimes. Bitcoin in particular has few redeeming public interest attributes when also considering its wasteful energy footprint. Jean-Claude Trichet, again, I ask, is this some kind of a pyramid scheme?
I am totally, of course, aligned with what the BIS said. And I trust that what remains absolutely abominable, if I may, is that in most countries of the world, in most continents of the world, you have no rules and regulations. So it is an instrument which can be utilized by money laundering, by financing of terrorism, which can be utilized for any kind of fraud, tax fraud, and so forth, including ransom, as we could see recently. So the idea that you can let go and become very, very significant at a global level, an instrument which is totally and directly contradictory with what the international community engaged over the last 30 years, in particular with the Financial Action Task Force, namely try to combat precisely money laundering, financing of terrorism, and so forth. So here we are an anomaly. Now, as I said, in any case, it's not a currency. So on top of these anomalies that exist because there is no rules and regulation in most countries of the world, not in France, because there is now a regulation here in this country, but in most countries of the world, there is absolutely no regulation for investors. But on top of that, of course, the BIS, as you said, is the central bank of central banks of the world and cannot let the currency qualification being utilized. It's not a currency. And yet at least most of them are not currency.
And yet the BIS is in favor of virtual currencies sponsored by central banks? Is it the case of if you can't beat them, join them?
The BIS is strongly in favor of digital currencies that would be issued by central banks. These would be real currencies with a central bank caring for the value of that currency and utilizing all the benefits, as it was just said, and I fully share that view, of the technology which is behind, which is extraordinarily, I would say, wonderful and must be utilized, but must be utilized in a fair fashion, of course, not to evade rules and regulations at a global level.